Heart to heart with Abba Gabba. Heart to heart with Abba Gabba. Hello and welcome to Heart with Abba Gabba, a podcast in honor of celebrating families and everything about children, beginning with us. Confidently, this will inspire and encourage us to listen, defend, and advocate for our infants, toddlers, preschoolers, school age children, teenagers, and all children from across the board to help us see the world from their perspectives and offer support throughout their stages of development. Celebrate! Heart to Heart with Abagaba is sponsored by Stop Smart, your one-stop destination for staffing and non-medical concierge services for adults, teens, and children. For more information, I encourage you to visit www.staff-smart.org and by phone 480-875-6871. You are listening to Heart with Abagaba with your host, Abby Dominguez. If you love children, seeking a better way to effectively respond to them instead of reacting, recognizing burnout at home and work, reclaiming your energy, staying grounded in chaos, and more tools on effective parenting, this podcast is for you. Today's guest is a powerhouse of emotional intelligence and transformational communication. Katherine Sellery is a three-time TEDx speaker, founder of the Conscious Parenting Revolution, and a trusted voice for parents, educators, and leaders seeking to create more connected, respectful, and empowered relationships at home and in the workplace. With over 2 decades of experience teaching the tools that build trust and dismantle power struggles, Catherine is here to shift the conversation around how we communicate, lead, and live. Welcome to Heart with Abagaba. I am conversing with you from Mesa, Arizona. Could you please tell our listeners where we are connecting from and share a short bio?
Hi, it's so nice to be here. I'm calling in from Venice Beach, California, where it's absolutely stunningly beautiful today.
Nice.
And I'm delighted to be here to share with you. Did you want me to share a bio as well as what you've already said?
Oh, yes. Please add to the
Oh,
bio I
okay.
shared.
Sure. Well, I have an Amazon bestseller, Seven Strategies to Keep Your Relationship with Your Kids from Hitting the Boiling Point. And if parents wanted to download that for free, they can do that by to freeparentingbook.com. And I give that as a gift. I have been coaching parents for a couple of decades with the Conscious Parenting Revolution. I've been in Hong Kong for 35 years and just came back to the US during COVID, actually. We had two kids in America, and we decided if we had to pick a continent, we'll go where the kids are.
Yeah.
So we came back for the COVID period thinking it would be a few months. And it turned out to be 3 years. And then by then we were just kind of like, we're back here and it's nice and we'll just stay. So we did that. I went to law school. I'm a trained mediator. I do work with a lot of families in conflict and support them with reconnection, healing, and reconciliation. I am definitely passionate about kids and seeing them as children or people too.
Yeah.
So my movement, if you will, that I've been beating the little drum for the last few decades has been around seeing children as people too.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, just so we just got to be an advocate for their, what do I want to call it? Their developing skill sets,
Yes.
which they hold them and how they present themselves in a light that could be seen negatively. And to be able to recontextualize what we see and how we see it in the narrative that we're telling ourselves about it.
I am so thankful. Thank you so very much for sharing that.
Mm,
This is what Heart to Heart with Apagaba is all about. And I'm so
beautiful.
grateful to have you here today. I cannot wait to delve in the questions that I have for you.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. So what makes your quiz different from the typical parenting style assessments people are used to?
Well, I think that, to just sort of reframe the conversation around parenting, I
Yes,
think that the historic perspective of parents was to teach children how to behave.
yes.
And so the context around that, at least when I grew up, was what will the neighbors think?
Mhm,
And so it was a lot around what other people think about me as a parent and
mhm.
whether I'm doing a good job or a bad job, or whether I'm proud or not proud of A, myself potentially, and B, how my children show up and make me feel good about my parenting, to a conversation of what the neighbors think I is none of my business. And I have absolutely no control over how other people see or view me. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. And I want my children to learn how to regulate their emotions. And
Yes,
if they're out of control of their emotions, my greatest concern is supporting them to have the skills to be able to bring themselves back under control, because kids can have, and so can adults, feelings about their feelings.
yes,
So the more out of control they become, the more support they need in to co-regulate with them until they can learn how to regulate by themselves.
yes.
So our entire perspective isn't about other people and what they're thinking about me. Instead, it's about creating a generation of children who are seeing themselves as capable and competent, with support of being able to overcome those big feelings and present themselves in ways that they feel good about, not what other people feel good about, but they
Yeah,
feel good about. So it's a whole mindset around internal locus of causality rather than an external locus of causality. For example, people in general use rewards and punishments in order to get the behaviors that they're looking for. It's a typical behavioralist approach. Well, we want the behaviors, but we want them for the reasons that are different than because you're afraid of me if you don't do the behavior I want.
right.
So the whole emphasis is a lot away from because I said so, or because of if you don't, this is what's going to happen to you, the threats, and more about, wow, I can see you're really struggling here with the no. And I want to help you through that. And I also want to find times for us to have conversations that I know are going to be triggering to you in circumstances other than in public, where it's harder for you to regain and it's more difficult for me to be around you when you're struggling regaining your composure.
I love that. Because then it's a learning growth for us and for them as well.
We learned that there are places where we can have the situations diffuse more quickly, and that there are opportunities to have inflammatory conversations outside of other people's audience. And that if we think through our day and what's coming up, we can choose the difficult conversations to be had in privacy
Privacy.
before we actually get to the problem moments. So if you know that you're going to get on an airplane and that it's going to be stressful anyway, and that everybody is going to be vying for the aisle seat or the window seat, I think it's a good idea to talk about where everybody's going to be sitting on the airplane before we get to the airport. So you just have the big conversation before you get there.
Before
And
you
I'm
get
sure you
there.
can think about 10 million other situations in which where I have the conversation about when we are going to leave the party, or how we're going to leave the party, or how many just 5 more minutes I can handle, or any of those kinds of day-to-day problems that we experience, from leaving birthday parties to necessarily sometimes just fun activities or even the park, or possibly when we're leaving the club or YWCA, wherever it is that they're having a good time, it's hard for them to leave. So
Yes,
teaching that transitional skill, because transitions can be hard for kids,
it
like
can.
they can be hard for adults. I mean,
Yes.
the bottom line is that where we have those conversations beforehand, really working through the feelings that come up when we're having a really good time and it's hard to leave, and all those kinds of things can be done in spaces before we get to the conflict zone.
Yes, I totally agree with that. So I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to create the conscious parenting revolution, and how did your own experience as a parent shape your work?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was inspired as a mom struggling to figure out how to respond to, I guess you would just say situations where you felt like some kind of discipline was necessary, but I was at least only familiar with one model, which was really about rewards and punishments.
Yes.
And it was the only tool I had in my toolbox. And I had this little sweet little 2-year-old boy who was the kindest, most adorable thing you'd ever seen. And I just didn't feel like that was the right approach. But something needed to happen. There
Yes.
needed to be some kind of a response to situations where he was still maybe struggling with impulse control, or he was struggling with kind of the social niceties, or he was struggling with, quote unquote, being polite or well mannered, or any of the things that happen in public that we cringe when our kids don't show up the way we'd like them to. And so how do we have the teachable moment without it being about go to your room, or the 1 2 3 magic, or the threats? I was struggling with the question, and so I went in search of, with my husband, we both were kind of like, what do we do other than what we've known and what was done to us? So to not just do the wash and the repeat, and a lot of transgenerational trauma can get brought forward into those moments, we looked for help.
Yes.
And on that journey of looking for help, I really found my passion, which was around the fact that I don't think I grew up in a family where children were seen as people too. There was no voice for the children. It was really about basically just agree with us
Yeah.
and don't really, if you argue or if you have a different perspective, we don't want to hear it.
Yes. I'm familiar with that. I'm
You
familiar
resonate
with
with
that.
that?
It
Yeah.
resonated with me. Yes.
Yeah. So I didn't want that to come forward. I understood what was probably behind it for my parents and their parents before them and before them and before them, is was just really harmony
Mhm.
and looking for cooperation, and just seeing anything other than harmony and cooperation as being disrespectful. And it was like, well, I wonder if there's another way to describe this. I'm not saying I didn't want harmony and cooperation. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely wanted that as well. And I just needed to figure out how to get there without making it that the other person was being disrespectful. And that's where I say children are people too. They have their feelings and needs. And this is not pandering. I've had so many people recontextualize my perspective as being somehow indulgent. And I don't think it is. I'm always curious to hear where that other person is coming from. And I would be curious if that's coming up for you, because I don't see it as indulgent. I see it as, all right, they have fewer skills to manage their emotions. They are developmentally wherever they are based
Yes.
on the age of the child. So their capacities are limited. I would like to have the easy yes, but if I'm getting a no, then what is going on inside of them? I say this, if they're saying no to me, they're saying yes to something inside of themselves.
Right.
So then we go back to kind of a number of the different models. So I guess you could say I feel like I got to study with and under some of what I would call the giants in the field of parenting and communication, and that I get to stand on their shoulders and be the great synthesizer of some of the greatest communication parenting experts in the world who I benefited from, and I get to bring forward into my own children's lives, as well as support other parents with. And that is that I believe that whatever's coming up for that child, maybe it's rooted in the basics,
Mhm.
level one, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food, air, water, and sleep. Like maybe we just need to meet those, and that the resistance will disappear because their brain is deprived of glucose in the moment, and they just don't
Yeah.
have enough to be able to support an outer voice in their world saying something that they really didn't want to hear. And that's really behind it, as simple as just a glucose deficiency.
Yes.
Maybe it's one of the other unmet needs, but just having the paradigm around seeing resistance coming not from something like disrespect and the judgment around it, but coming from an underlying unmet need. and a child struggling with the emotions that have arisen and learning and teaching what we call the language of feelings and needs. It's a process language. It's different than labeling things with judgment and responding to my judgment of it.
Wow, I really like that. And so how can we start identifying the patterns we've inherited that are no longer serving us or our children?
Great question. I think the first place that we have an opportunity to identify our own dysfunctional family patterns is when we become overreactive. So if we're in an overreaction, we most people know it. Do you know what I'm talking about when I talk about not just a reaction, but an overreaction?
Yes, I totally
Okay.
do. Yeah, I totally do.
Like there's reaction, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing dysfunctional about that. The overreactions are really the windows to our souls. I think that's how I look at them. So when I find myself in an overreaction, I go into all of the things that we do when we're in an overreaction. We tend to call everybody we know and tell them how wrong or bad this other person was.
Yes,
And we, form alliances and we try to get people to agree with us. And I mean, we do a lot of things that are not actually moving the needle forward in terms of having a good measured reaction and response that leads to helpful change.
I really like that. So, how do your technique apply beyond parenting in classrooms, boardrooms, and relationships?
Totally. Well, I mean, really what we're talking about is human dynamics.
Yes.
We're talking about human dynamics and how we show up in our human relationships when conflict arises. I think when we show up in our relationships and there's no conflict, there's basically nothing to solve for. If I'm not triggered and I'm not upset about something, whether, I'm with children or adults, I'll be okay. It's when there's something going on that I don't like the other person's actions, behaviors, something is happening. What do I do then?
What do I do then? Yes.
Right? It's about those moments in time. Like, how am I showing up during those? Am
Yeah.
I triggered? In which case, I tend to find that my behavior becomes manipulative, abusive, self-righteous,
Mm.
holier than thou. I mean, all of those things, right?
Yes.
And
Wow.
then, it's really hard for the other person to be seen, heard, and understood from their perspective.
It is.
Yeah.
So, so what's one small shift someone can make right now to create more connection and
Yeah.
less conflict in their lives?
I think, there are a few like sentence stems that if you just add in your own internal narrative when we go into these moments where we tend to make the other person wrong, instead of just being convinced that my perspective is correct, I say to myself, okay, I'm telling myself they're wrong. I'm telling myself this is all about them. I'm telling myself that they're jerks. I'm telling myself. So then it helps me see that I'm the one creating this experience for myself.
Ah,
And that's a real shift is to think I'm telling myself this and therefore I'm having this response. That's not to exonerate the other person. It's not to say that the other
ah,
person has a behavior that they may it would be useful in relationship for them to also look at themselves. I'm not
yeah,
saying that other people don't need to look at themselves. It's just I can't do much about that.
yeah,
I can do a lot about what I'm telling myself.
yes.
And what I know just from my experience is that other people, I think not just me, others also call it the tragic expression of the unmet need. So the tragic expression of the unmet need is when in any human being, they're struggling to meet their needs.
Yes.
They're drowning probably in their emotions. They are not centered. And really, to a certain extent, you could say that they're not even there anymore.
Hmm.
The feeling realm and the emotions have taken over. And we are dealing with another person who is lost
Mhm.
in their overwhelm. And that can show up socially unacceptably.
Yeah.
And it can show up truly like someone flailing in an ocean. And we know when people are drowning that unless you're a really good swimmer, don't even attempt to try to rescue them.
Yes.
They will pull you down.
Oh,
They will
yeah.
pull you down. If you are a really good swimmer, go in your little boat and pull them in with you
Yes.
and wrap them in a nice warm blanket, give them some cocoa, put your arm around them,
Aw.
and say, I'm here with you. Things are going to be better. If we have that demeanor of not taking it personally, that they're struggling and falling apart, again, child, adult, it doesn't really matter, that
Hmm.
this is just another human being having a rough day.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And don't take it personally. It's not even about you. And I can say that that's true even when your name is attached to it, that there is a lot of blame going on internally. There's a lack of responsibility happening. There's no sense of how did I create this and what's my role in this and what have I done to participate in what we're now dealing with. So if you have that mindset for self and others, you can have self-compassion
Hmm.
and you can have compassion for the rest of humanity.
Hmm.
And I just think it's a better way.
Wow. That's really deep. So, what are some hidden patterns you see parents repeating that they don't even realize are
Yeah. I hear it all the
reacted in their
time.
own
Yeah.
upbringing?
I hear parents say to me all the time, well, they never listen to me.
Hmm.
So that's a really, really, really common one. And never listening, I always, of course, I listen to their frustration that what they really mean is they're not getting the cooperation that they want. They're hitting a lot of resistance and that they're exhausted generally.
Yeah,
So, I mean, how exhausting is that, right? We all know it's just
it
like
is.
sometimes I feel like I'm climbing a mountain every day. I just would like some cooperation and ease in my relationships. So, that to me is one of the easiest ones to solve in truth. It takes very few skills for someone to learn that we oftentimes say to someone else they're not listening to me when if I were to interview the other, they would say they never listen to me. And it
Oh,
really is a mirror on the wall.
yeah.
And as much as I feel like I'm not seen, heard, and understood from my perspective, the person that I'm thinking that needs to do that would say to me, I don't feel seen, heard, and understood from my perspective.
Hmm.
And that's the big breakdown. I actually had a client once, many, many years ago, who said, my husband tells me I never listen to him. And I'm like, of course I listen to you. And I tell him, what are you talking about? And after taking my training, she said to her husband the next time it came up, instead of that old narrative, she said to him, you feel like I never listened to you.
Oh, so ask it back. She asked it
Well,
because,
she reflected back what she heard him saying.
right, right,
So
right.
you feel like I never listened to you rather than try to convince him he was wrong.
Oh,
And when she said that back to him, he started crying.
oh,
And it was the breakthrough. She wrote me and said, you saved my marriage.
it was the
And it was so
breakthrough.
simple to take those people. When I feel that way, I'm pretty sure the other person feels that way too.
Right, right.
So if I can take the leap and just stop everything and
Hmm.
break a pattern, breaking patterns, really, a lot of breaking a pattern is just doing things differently.
Yes.
So if I just break the pattern and do something differently, I could just stop the whole thing by saying, it seems like you think I don't listen to you. And the
Hmm.
other person at that very moment could say, no, you never listen to me. And just that right there is the breakthrough.
It's a
And I
breakthrough.
could say to them, well, I feel the same way. And we could now be in conversation about how we both feel unheard
Yes,
and how hard it is for me to have space to listen to you when I feel like what you're saying isn't representative of how I feel.
of how I feel.
I mean,
Yes.
I hear that a lot where I have a client who gets really upset. So many of my clients come because of their kids, but it really does turn out to be about their partner.
Hmm.
So again, this is a client with a couple of kids, and it started out that way. And it really has turned into, I just don't feel like when I hear the way my wife talks about how I think about or feel about this, that the way she's characterized it isn't actually accurate. And so when she feels like I'm always arguing, what I'm really just trying to say is, I don't feel like you got me.
Mm,
And I got to say something about it. I can't just let this go on and on and on where, the way you've characterized me isn't how I actually feel inside.
mhm.
So that happens a lot
It
where
does.
I think, children feel that way all the time.
They do.
And this is where I talk about like, children are people too. And a big part of my training is helping us exercise the ability to discern when we have a negative view about them. So
Mhm,
if we see a behavior that we would like not to be there,
mhm.
if it's socially unacceptable, we generally go into a very judgmental perspective.
Yeah.
We can't help ourselves.
Mm-mm.
That's a stop. That's another opportunity to just like, okay, I'm going to stop it because this is just a judgment. And
Yeah.
I know what happens to the mind when we go into judgment.
Hmm.
We then use our judgment to justify our punishment.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you're familiar or not with Dr. Thomas Gordon, but he talked about and was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 3 times. And his whole work and body of work, I was a trainer under that name for many years. And the body of work says that when you use power over, you activate retaliation, rebellion, and resistance,
Ooh,
the 3 R's.
the three R's.
So retaliation, rebellion, and resistance account for 75% of behavioral disruptions. So if 75% of behavioral disruptions are a response to someone having used power over me, then I could eliminate 3 out of 4 of my problems by changing how I addressed that other thing, what we're going to
Yes.
call the primary issue.
Hmm.
And if the primary issue could have been addressed differently, then go to your room, no TV, you're grounded, any of those power over responses, they will activate the slam door. I hate you, mommy. I hate you, daddies,
Right.
kicking the dog. They
Right.
generate that. That's retaliation, rebellion, and resistance.
Yes. Yes. That's a good example. Yes.
Those are secondary problems now. So not only do I have the initial problem of, let's say it was staying out too late, not getting off your devices, not doing your homework, leaving your bag and shoes in the middle of the living room, whatever it is.
Hmm.
There are 10 million issues that we face as parents every day.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Life is one long series of conflict resolution. So the better we get at that, the less we activate the 3 R's.
Yes.
And then we don't go off onto this completely ridiculous other problem of solving those reactions because we never activated them in the first place.
Yes. Yes. Wow. That's really deep. So how do we start parenting in alignment with our values when we've spent years just trying to get through the day?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not easy to change habits. And basically that's what we're doing is we have a habit and we know from the power of habit that they can be really good for us.
Yes.
So, we drive to work, say, every day, or we drive home from work every day. We know that road so well, we're not even thinking about it anymore, right?
Yes.
That's the power of habit, is that it's so deeply ingrained in you that a different part of your being has taken over. This is why the habit of getting up and making your bed is so important. Getting up and brushing your teeth is so important. All the basic hygiene things that
Yeah.
we have learned as children and we want to teach our children. The joy of that is that we don't think about them anymore. I
Yeah.
just get up and make my bed and I brush my teeth. It's a habit.
It's a habit. Yeah.
So the power of positive habits is that we don't even think about them anymore. It's autopilot. The problem is that the habits that we formed that are also autopilot are the ones that we need to change if they're not the positive ones. How
I
do we do it, right? How do we break it? So there is a great book. It's called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. I don't know if you've read it, but he really takes this question and in his whatever, 200 or 300 pages goes into what's required to really change culture and habits and show up consistently with a different, better habit. It's hard to do alone.
Yes.
Really helps to do it in community where you've got other people who are also on the same path.
Yes.
Not only does it help, he basically says you can't do it without that. So you need to have a group of friends,
Hmm.
and work together with them to say, I don't want to be that knee-jerk reactive parent anymore who just responds to the behaviors that are socially unacceptable with go to your room or you're grounded or whatever those things are that we do to let the world know that we know that wasn't okay.
Yeah.
Right? So instead of that, we have to truly have worked through in our own mind and our own consciousness and our own heart that what we're looking at is the tragic expression of unmet needs, or it's just somebody who is learning how to behave, just like they're learning how to spell.
Hmm.
And if somebody comes home and made a mistake on their spelling test, it doesn't occur to us to ground them.
Yeah.
So why do we look at behavior differently?
Yes.
Why is it developmentally we don't expect them to know it and we have all the space in the world for them to learn it? And
Hmm.
with behavior, we don't have the same idea.
Wow. That is really deep. So what are some things parents can do, like for example, in a situation where the power thing comes up and then instead of telling our children, go to your room or all these kind of
Right.
things, what can we say or do to have meaningful results and not have them
Yes.
retaliate, I hate you and all this?
Yes, exactly. Without the three R's, retaliation, rebellion, and resistance. So, I mean, the blueprint is something like this. First of all, we recognize the situations where we could have avoided the problem altogether by talking about it in advance of the situation.
Right, you mentioned that. Yes.
That's number one.
Yes.
Number two is we recognize that when children are out of command of themselves, the best thing we can do to bring them back into command is to bring them close,
Bring them
to
close. I like that.
co-regulate, to
Co-regulate.
support them in being able to regain command of themselves. So this is where we literally we're in a situation, they're melting down, and we bring them close and we say, I can see you're really struggling right now.
Yes.
Let me hold you
Oh,
and support you in being able to regain and command of yourself.
yes.
You've got this. I'm
Yes.
with you. You're not
Yes.
alone. So
Yes.
supporting them when a lot of people, instead of bringing them close, push them away,
Oh,
right?
yes.
And that's when somehow the go to your room thing, as if there's a magic genie in there who's going to teach them how to self-regulate. It's not going to happen. I think what usually happens is that parents get so triggered
Yes. Yeah.
that they can't bring them in close
Hmm.
because they're telling themselves that this is a child who's doing this on purpose or is manipulative or out to get me, or there's that negative view of children.
Yes.
So if we see children as innocents, and we see them as simply struggling to have the skill set to manage their emotion when they're disappointed or when they're tired or when they're hungry. And that this is a meltdown that we could have predicted because they're too tired, they're too hungry, they stayed too long. I really brought this on by not having actually changed and shifted and made the transitions earlier.
Mm.
And here we are. And more often than not, even if you've thought ahead, you're here you are, life is lifing. And this is
Yeah.
just part of having children.
Yes, it is.
It's just, I mean, there's no way around it. This is going to be part of the journey. If you don't want
Yep.
this part of the journey, don't have kids. Oh. So bringing them in close,
Bring them in close. I love that.
co-regulating with them, supporting them through it, letting them know they've got this, that you're there to help them get through it, and they'll calm down. You can also help by if you have a feeling for what the circumstances were that led to them falling apart,
Yeah.
you could then add that in your narrative. It's really hard to leave a party when you love so many of your friends so much.
Right,
This
right.
is really tough.
This
As
is,
much as you knew we had to leave, you just don't want to leave. You just could spend so much more time here because this is so much fun. I
yeah.
get it. I really love my friends too. I know it's to
Oh,
say goodbye, right? So you could
I
do
love
that.
that.
If it has to do with, disappointment around losing a game or something like that, you would add that in. It's really not easy when you care so much about the game and you lose. It's
Yeah.
really not easy to handle that, is it? It's
And
really tough.
yeah.
So you just are expressing, I mean, these are the foundations, right, of active listening. And compassionate listening is just the same with maybe a little bit more empathy. But actively listening someone is listening to the feelings and the underlying unmet needs and reflecting it back to them. It's a skill.
It's
So
a
learn this
skill.
skill. And here's the thing, when you learn this skill and you're modeling it, your children learn it because you modeled it for them. They don't have to go take a class in assertiveness. They
Right.
need to take classes in listening. They've learned to listen because you listened
Yes.
and
Yes.
they know how.
Yes.
They've learned empathy because you are empathic around
Yeah.
them and with them
Yes.
through their suffering and your suffering. You
Yes.
show and model self-compassion for when it's hard for you.
Yes.
You're the one drowning in the ocean, and
Hmm.
you're putting on the oxygen mask, and you're caring for yourself in ways that they can see, oh, wow, mom matters
Yes.
to herself.
Yeah.
I matter to myself. I mean, we talk about self-esteem, and yet so many of the ways in which we raise our children is not geared toward creating high self-esteem.
I love that. I love that. Oh my goodness, Catherine, it's been so wonderful to have you on today. We have a minute and like 30 seconds. Could you please tell us again where we can find your book? If you have any
Yes.
social media handles or website, so we can follow you and learn more about the great work that you're doing.
Thank you. So consciousparentingrevolution.com, go to freeparentingbook.com and download 7 strategies to keep your relationship with your kids from hitting the boiling point. Um, Katherine_Sellery is my Insta. If you just go to the website, you'll see all of my social channels there. Um, and you can join my mailing list. I send out a newsletter every week covering, millions of different topics that are going on in all of our lives relative to raising children and supporting each other on the journey.
Nice, nice. I want to thank you so very much again, and I hope that we connect again sometime soon. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. So great to be here. Appreciate you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Heart to Heart with Abagaba is also sponsored by Aspire Behavioral Health. They offer monitoring, counseling, medication, and personal care services in a beautiful residential setting. I encourage you to contact them at aspirecbh@outlook.com or call 480-875-6871. Please feel free to share this podcast with your friends, families, and loved ones. And if you would like to connect with me, the best place would be on my website, abigailedominguez.com, or on social media. You can follow me on Instagram at author_Abigail_Dominguez. And we have a new YouTube channel at Heart to Heart with Abagaba. So please feel free to check us out also. And finally, I'd like to make a disclaimer that the stories and points of views we have shared on this podcast are personal and from our life and work experiences. We are not legal, medical, mental, or health advisors. Have an awesome day, and I look forward to connecting with you again on this platform. Be your light, be joyful, and as always, celebrate.